So we know what we're here for. This is about changing the rules of menopause. But let me kick off with a question, because I'm talking about rules, but who says you can't completely change how you feel about life so that you feel more aligned with who you really are and stop feeling angry and sad and anxious and guilty and lost, unworthy, invisible, incompetent, worthless, and do all of that when you're menopausal or post-menopausal? Well, the sad fact is you do. You don't realize you're doing it, but if you've any doubt at all that huge positive change is possible, it does mean that you're running an internal rule set and you don't even realize you've got it running, but you discover it like a bus hitting a wall when menopause anxiety arrives. So the bad news, which some of you may sadly have already discovered, is that it can negatively impact on every aspect of your life, your work, your relationships. It impairs your confidence, it hampers your sleep. And here's the really bad news. Lots of people say, well, when will this end? But this may continue beyond menopause if you do nothing. So here's what starts to happen. As I say, some of you may already be experiencing this. Some of you may have this down the line. I hope not, for your sake. You start to hate the job you used to love, and you feel angry with people around you who you know care about you, you love them, but hey, they're driving you nuts. Or you just become tearful and moody and you have no idea what the hell is going on. It's as if that life that you put together, you're in control of, has suddenly spiraled out of control and you have no idea what to do. So today, what I'm going to do to help you here is share 3 little known secrets. They're not, I mean, why would they be secret? I don't know. They just seem to be secret about menopause anxiety specifically, about rule breaking and how you can revolutionize your thinking in an incredibly short period of time, starting today. So here's why. If you can move past this whole roller coaster, you know, the ups and the downs, that, oh, 1 minute I'm okay, next minute I'm not, anxiety, depression, frustration, overthinking, if you can move past all of that, then you remember who the hell you are, what you really want for yourself, for your life, work and home, and miraculously, it seems, find the long lost energy to achieve it. And by the way, I want to be really clear up front. If you started watching this, there's no sales pitch at the end, okay? So you can just chill and relax, sit back, enjoy the content, take notes if you like, but above all, there's no sales pitch. But let me begin, if it's okay with you, to share a little bit about me. Because my story reflects your story. It might not seem like it when you look at this slide. You might think, how's that got anything to do with what I'm going through right now? So very recently, I've become the Menopause Anxiety Freedom Coach. I'm the founder of the Mental Well Factory, which initially started to support young people with their mental health. I'm an author of one book that's being published, Success Reframe, another book that's just about to be published by Routledge. I'm a podcaster, Revelation. You'll see the logo there, Revelation podcast, check that out. And I'm also a professional speaker. But none of this really matters. What matters is that I've helped thousands of people, including myself, who have been transfixed with a sense of fear, of inadequacy, of doubting whether they had it within themselves to achieve the kind of goals that they maybe dreamed about, but really wondered whether it was at all possible. Oh, I keep clicking too quickly, I apologize. So my new mission, which came about literally in the last year, is to help professional entrepreneurial women who feel trapped in menopause and mayhem and meltdown to confidently live without anxiety, because you don't have to live it, and to do that in just 90 days. So if you want to connect with me, this will appear later, so don't panic too much. But if you want to connect with me, those are some of the ways you can connect with me at the bottom of this slide. I'm on Instagram. I'm probably more active on Instagram than anywhere, but there's also videos on YouTube and in a private Facebook group it's called Menopause Anxiety Freedom, but that is the address, is Menopause Freedom. So if you want to connect with me on any of those, please do. I'd love to get to know you better. Right, I will show this slide again later. Okay, so how do I do that? Let's just look at how the hell that works. There's 3 core pillars, and I talk about taking people from menopause crisis to freedom and its acceleration, because, you know, in my experience, went on for years. In most of our experience, if it just went on for a few months, who would, like, we wouldn't care. It would be like a speed bump in the road. But it doesn't. It drags on and on and on for years. So you want acceleration through it. And I base this on 3 core pillars. 1, personal impact, neural pathways, and living. So the personal impact is really looking at your work, how you're impacted at work, in relationships, and in terms of your mental acuity, your clarity, your thinking. Like, oh, I can't think. There's this fog in my head. And the 2nd core pillar is neural pathways. So that's shifting and tapping into internal resources that you may have doubted you ever had, or believe you've lost touch with. And looking at the brain-gut axis, which has become really important in recent years. So you flip the switch from negative neural pathways to positive neural pathways that will take you out of this place of crisis, so that you can start the 3rd core pillar, which is living, and finally return to this place of freedom, regain control, regain your confidence. And it's a 90-day journey. So that's how I help people through it. And here's the connection again. If you didn't take it down last time, here are you might want to take a snapshot of this slide so that you know how to connect with YouTube, Instagram, podcast, Revelation, and in the private Facebook group. And just quickly, if you would like to have a conversation about this, like when you've heard the content I'm going to share with you right now, and you think, oh, I want to dive a bit deeper into that, then I'm making a 7-day offer to what I call Menopause Anxiety Escape, to flesh out a plan based on those 3 core pillars and look at how you're impacted, to figure out whether there's a route forwards for you that is way quicker and will accelerate your journey out of menopause anxiety. So here's all the links. I'll share them again later. But that's only for people living, it's only for people that are living. It's only for people listening to this masterclass now. And that link, you can't get that anywhere else. So make sure you take a copy of that. And it's not available. So if you don't take it up, it's gone. All right. Right. That's it. Promised you there'll be no pitch. That call allows you to take what you learn today, so that you better understand how this whole thing called menopause anxiety affects you personally, and how to apply it to your experience. Because I'm going to share my experience and the experience of some of my clients and the kind of broader generics of what's going on. But your experience is completely unique to you. And so you need a personal pathway. Okay, are you in the right place? Let's just check. Do we need to be here? Well, yes, if you've been feeling remotely panicky or anxious, angry. Remember, we talked about anger with people that love us, or even people that don't, people at work maybe, or sad, depressed feeling, and way more than is normal. and you've no idea what the hell is going on, you are in the right place. If you're not sleeping well, your concentration is completely gone, and you've begun to doubt your own decision making. You're not quite confident in the way you used to be. And you're in the right place if you feel like, just simply you can't cope like you used to. And more than likely, in my experience, the kind of women I'm talking to are the kind of women that used to cope with everything. It's like, no, I can do this stuff, and suddenly I can't. And that is really, really unnerving. And you're in the right place if you care deeply about responsibility to others, to your family, to your colleagues, but you also have a lot more that you want to achieve for yourself. And it seems like you're having to make a choice, and you're not in a good place to make any kind of choices, and you shouldn't have to. And you're in the right place if those thoughts are more and more dominated by the worst thing that could happen. And, oh, if only you'd done something differently in the past, if only someone else had done something differently. Your thoughts are so consumed with what could go wrong and what did go wrong, but there's very little space for what's going on right now. But the truth is, you're probably smiling and coping on the outside, but terrified and failing on the inside, and feeling afraid and lost. It's probably likely that you put yourself down, way down the list of priorities. So if you have a list, you either in the small print at the bottom, or you don't even really make it to the list. Or it's a very, very, very long list, and every time you remake the list, you go back on it, but you never quite get to the top and get the important stuff. Other people's needs, your children's education, help with rental mortgages, supporting elderly parents. This is my mother in this picture. This is my lovely partner. There's cars, there's things for the home, there's everything, but not you. You're in the right place. And here's another thing that I hear, and I did this too. I did all of this. You're in the right place if you tend to tell yourself, listen, I shouldn't complain. I've got so much to be grateful for. And I hope you'll recognize that's me in the picture. And that's my very best friend. And I'm, we're in our garden. It's a lovely sunny day, obviously before lockdown. And so much, it's easy to go, listen, I live in this wonderful place. I have great friends. I have great family. I have money coming in, I have a great job, or whatever your story is that you tell yourself you should be grateful for. And gratitude is important. But if it tells you, you feel it's unreasonable to want more, like to feel better than you do right now, then that's not helping you. That's as logical as ignoring that small lump in your breast because somebody else has stage 3 cancer. Like, oh, my needs aren't as important. They are important, and you are in the right place. You want better, and I want better for you. What we want to do here is help you put an end to that vortex, the spinning, spiraling negative thoughts that just seem to drag you down deeper and deeper, lower and lower. And instead, what we want to do is increase that calm and that joy for living and put an end to all the irritability, all the anger. Honestly, is that too much to ask? I don't think it is. What you want to be able to do, I know, even though I can almost reach in to the camera and grab you and go, listen, this is possible to wake up with energy and excitement for the day ahead. Like you used to, and you will do, and you can do again, whatever is going on right now. So you will get out of stuckness, and you will discover what it is that you really want for you, even if right now you couldn't even pick which coffee you're going to have faced with all the choices. You know, you couldn't make the smallest of decisions. You can get to a place where you can do way more than that and really start and see this, oh, this is really radical, as an opportunity. This awful place you're in, suddenly to see it as an opportunity. And I know you won't see that now, and I'm not asking you to see that now, but just hold a glimmer of trust, of hope, of possibility that what I'm telling you just might have a grain of truth in it. Yeah, is it possible? All very well for you to say, Shirley, but is this possible? So earlier on, I talked about the core pillars that I work through with people to get them unstuck. But what are they based on? Why? This is the secret stuff. And I said to you, well, why is it secret? Why should this be any secret to anyone? Well, that's the whole subject of an entirely different webinar, and I'm not going to get on my soapbox or go there now. I'm going to help you by making some sense, because right at the beginning, it can help just a little. That's what this webinar is about. It's just to make some sense of this. Even if you do nothing else, just to make some sense. So the core principles of what happens when you tip into this place of menopause anxiety, and we can, you know, whether it's perimenopause or menopause, it doesn't matter. We know what we're talking about. The three things that happen are you experience 1, serotonin depletion. 2, your neural pathway stops serving you. And 3, what I describe as stress synchronicity. So what do I mean by each of those core principles? I'm going to dive into them a little bit more in a moment, but I want to share my story so that you have things in context, because who wants all the theory? It's so much easier to go, oh yeah, that happened to me. So I'm going to dive deep into my story because I think it will help. So here we are. Let's have a happy beginning of the story. And here's the beautiful English countryside. And I was there on a hot sunny day, enjoying a glass of wine and about to have a meal in a lovely pub garden in the Cotswolds. And, you know, here's the reason why. Obviously, this is before lockdown. We know this is before lockdown. The reason why was that I was celebrating my very first 5-figure month in a brand new coaching business. I'd literally been doing it months. So this was a monumental achievement for me. For me, this is a monumental achievement. And I was feeling amazing. I'd just written this book too. So that, you know, I was just like, oh, look at me, I'm so amazing. And that's, you know, how I felt. And these were the kind of reviews, and none of these were the kind of reviews that you go, hey, listen, I know you're my friend. I don't know these people. Oh, one of them. I know one of those people, but I didn't know she'd bought the book, Julie at the bottom. Everyone else, completely random. So I was feeling pretty good. Why wouldn't I? You know, here's the book. I changed the cover, by the way. So that's it in the middle, and that's the old cover on the left-hand side. That's the rear of the book. I'd been producing all of these online programs. You know, there we have SOS. I'd done a big telly summit. I was on the cover of magazines. Everything was lovely. 53 years old, on top of the world. Couldn't be better. Loving it. But then things changed. And it felt like it was sudden. You know, with hindsight, we can see the signs, but in the moment, it feels like you fall off a cliff. 3 months after that meal, that drink in that lovely pub garden, everything changed. Suddenly, I was in a state of crisis and I was in debt. That business that I'd built and worked so hard and was doing so amazingly with, gone. And unsurprisingly, my confidence had gone with it. And I started binge eating carbs like they were going out of fashion. Despondency doesn't really cover it. I mean, it was deeper than despondency. It was the worst possible place. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but sadly I've realised that my experience was not as unique as I would imagine. But I want you to know what this was really like. Here's a picture of me around that time. So you can see I'm in a hotel room there. I should have been feeling happy. I was still doing stuff, but I doubted everything. I would feel this anxiety, was crying, forgetful. I really thought, I even went to the doctors about this. I thought I had early onset dementia. Things that were easy just weeks before became really, really difficult. And I think that expression really gives a sense of how I was feeling. And how it affected me was that I didn't realise while I was in it, this is all hindsight, I realised I stopped smiling and laughing at all, really. I honestly, for years, and I really avoided social gatherings. I would turn down, go for coffee, no, I'm not in the mood, I'm busy, I didn't want to go, didn't want to see friends, didn't want to do anything. I was completely and utterly lost. And it genuinely, another horrible picture, I apologise for the pixelation that I've blown up. I'm sharing these pictures, not because I want you to see pictures of me per se. They're horrible pictures. They're not the kind of pictures I would want to share in any other circumstances. But that's me, and I was only mid-50s. I looked like 108. And the thing was, it really did feel like my life was over. I just could not see what was worth living for. What was going to be better than I just couldn't see what was going to be better and how on earth I was going to get out of this. So I'd clearly gone from someone who could take on the world to someone who believed I was barely competent at a minimum wage job. This is a genuine job, serving olives, cooked meats, all those kind of things at a deli counter. And the reason I particularly want to focus on that just for a moment is because I told myself, and I hear this with clients and potential clients, telling myself the story that, well, do you know what? I just have to give up this stressful job. I can't do that anymore. I should just go with that grateful thing and recognize maybe I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I want to do something else. Maybe it would just be nice to have something that doesn't stress me and just enjoy life. I don't need all that pressure anymore. And that sounds so logical. And I bought into that too. But here's the thing. Even though I'd stopped earning the money, stopped doing the kind of high level, high powered, gotta think, move at high pace, I'd stopped doing all of that. I'd gone part-time, minimum wage, nice place, nice people, lovely customers, still anxious. It didn't change the anxiety. So don't be fooled if you think, oh yeah, if I just give all this up, I'll be fine. Because that isn't the case. So again, another horrible picture, but it's important. Here's how I felt: undervalued, invisible. And I know we're all familiar with this now because of lockdown, but I had begun living in my PJs and, as I said, binging on carbs. I told people I was happy. I very nearly believed it, but that picture shows what a lie that was. All of what I've just explained to you that was in my life, and I suspect many of you will go, oh, something like that happened to me. So parts of it, not all of it, but bits of it, they're all symptoms of a deeper problem, like classic iceberg on the surface and the deep iceberg beneath. And here's the thing that in a way made it worse, because I felt like I should have known this. I was a clinical hypnotherapist and I'd been working with anxiety for more than a decade. But I was so overwhelmed by the whole drama of it all, I really couldn't even think straight enough to work it out. I just couldn't. It had, and here's the thing, because I said right at the beginning, this whole menopause anxiety, any of the symptoms we experience have been this long-held mystery. Like, we just wandered into, and nobody told us. So it certainly did not occur to me that any of this had anything to do with menopause or perimenopause. I thought it was just me. So let's move forward. Let's move to a more positive place, because clearly I've come through this, but you want to know how, right? So not exactly a light bulb moment. Took 5 years, because remember, I didn't know what I was going through. I did the whole go to the doctor. Never occurred to me that it was menopause, and it never occurred to my GPs either. Nobody ever offered any advice or any solution that suggested this might, just might, have something to do with menopause. So 5 years later, breathe. I finally figured out how to apply what I'd been teaching others for so long as a clinical hypnotherapist about this. And you'll remember from the core pillars earlier on, the second core pillar was neural pathways. So we've looked at the impact. There was my first core pillar. That was my story. Oh, it was impacting my life, my relationships, my work, everything. And now we're on the second core pillar, building positive neural pathways. Duh. So I realized, and I'll share with you in a moment, the ways that I realized, but I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, it's possible to change this. I don't have to live like this. Another way is possible. I could actually, better than just get back to coping, I could do something better than that and actually begin to live life on my terms and know what the hell my terms were. So here's what happened. Let's jump straight to the end of the story, then a nice happy ending, then we'll come and we'll backfill with the detail. Remember those 3 secrets? I haven't forgotten them. I'm going to come back to them. So in short, I overcame that anxiety, and I rediscovered, I say rediscovered, but it was almost like I discovered for the first time the real me, a better version of me than I'd experienced previously. And I stopped all that worrying about purpose, like, purpose. That was one of my core anxieties, was what am I here for? What should I be doing? Why don't I know? I've never known. That was one of the things that my anxiety fed upon. I don't have a purpose. I don't know what my purpose is. And what I started doing was taking positive action and building positive neural pathways instead of that paralysis that is caused by the daily indecision, day after day after day, that feeds the anxiety. So here is what happened. And this felt like there's a 5-year gap, which I've told you about. But remember at the beginning, I said, look, 3 months, I went from being able to cope brilliantly to not being able to cope at all. And it felt like the same thing at the other end of the tunnel, that very quickly I went from, I can't cope, I don't know what's going on, to suddenly going, oh, wow, I can do things. And here's the evidence. So I went, I'm going to start a new business, the Mental Wealth Factory for young people. And I launched my professional speaking business. So here I started speaking at conferences. Literally, this was within months, on mental health for schools, national conferences. And I provided keynote speaking for the organisation Young Enterprise. I was on a bit of a roll. I thought, well, I'm not done. So I started doing things I never would have imagined before, and certainly wouldn't have felt capable of doing, which was pitching for book deals with leading publishers such as Routledge. And I mentioned at the beginning that the book that needs updating. Spring, well, no, it might be. It's done. It's with the publishers, and maybe they'll publish spring 2021. So I did that, and I got myself through it. And another time I'll share exactly how I got myself through it, but it's basically works on the basis of those 3 core pillars I told you about. And the neural pathways are the vital part of that. Once you understand the impact and you remap neural pathways, and you start to figure out what it is you want and where you're going and how you're going to get it. one tiny step at a time. So here's what happened. I did a talk and I just kind of shared my story. And at that point, still no idea this was menopause. Still had this, oh, this is just a midlife thing. You know, I'm having a midlife crisis. That's what my problem was. So I decided I would maybe create an online program, and I called it Midlife Reinvention. So I shared my story. I said, hey, anyone interested in maybe taking part in this? And people put their hands up. And that made me realize, well, hang on a minute. You remember that slide that said, is this just me? Is it just me? I thought, oh, well, clearly not. As you know, because you're sitting here listening to this, I wasn't alone. There were other women like you. And so the problem was way bigger than I realized. It wasn't about me at all. It was about us, about women of a certain type, of a certain age. And it was affecting us way more than anyone was telling us, which comes to the secret piece, really, doesn't it? But I want to tell you, this was a pivotal moment as well. This story really provides the fire in my loins that says, this isn't right. That's what drives me to work with people the way I do. Dr. Anne Carson, I read this story in the paper, by the way. Dr. Anne Carson is not one of my clients. However, I read the story and I thought, well, here's this woman. She's worked all these years, all the training that's required and the hoops you have to jump through to get to a place where you're a consultant radiologist in the NHS. And she says that she's been having these menopausal symptoms and not suddenly feels like she can't cope with the demands of her life. Now here the quote says, the menopause hit me like a roller coaster. But I couldn't fit it all in. What she went on to say was that she was contemplating giving up her job. So remember, go back to my olive story. I wanted to leap into the page. Go, no, don't do it. Don't do it. I mean, do it if you want, but don't think that that will solve the problem, because it won't. So all of this stuff where I'm going, well, hang on a minute, here's this Dr. Anne Carson, these other women that I'm talking to now, I'm suddenly aware of now. Well, how is this? How is this even a thing, which is the current way of expressing things? Because I don't know about you, but all I'd ever heard about was hormones, HRT, like that was it. If you were struggling with menopause, you had HRT, and it either worked for you or it didn't, and some people could have it, some people couldn't, and I was one of those that believed that I couldn't. And then, you know, there were clients who were in that age, so retrospectively I realized, well, hang on a minute, were these women menopausal? Were they suffering menopausal anxiety? And all I'd ever done was treat them for anxiety, not really putting the pieces of the puzzle together, because I didn't know there was a puzzle. And they'd been prescribed antidepressants, not working. Women were struggling. It's mad. And as I think you probably got the picture from the way I've told the story, I never put the two and two together. I never thought, well, hang on a minute, these women I'm helping are of this certain age. They're telling me they're on HRT. They're telling me antidepressants aren't working. And suddenly the penny dropped. I thought, oh, hang on a minute. I think there's a connection here. So finally, you might think, oh, finally. But it was important. I think it was really important for you to hear that backstory, because I want you to know that you're not alone, that all those mad thoughts that you might think are mad are thoughts that other people have had. All those experiences are experiences that other people have had. It's not just you and it's not just me. And that is important to know. So now I'm going to dive in to those three core principles that I introduced much earlier on in this masterclass. And it's really going to revolutionize what you believe is possible and the kind of goals. You might be thinking, goals? I don't have, my goal is to get up in the morning. But serious goals that not businessy, someone told you you've got to, but things you want to do. So here's the one. I've added a bit more detail. So the secret one was about serotonin depletion. And you might have thought, A, you might have thought, what's serotonin? And B, why is that depleted? You've heard of estrogen. So I think most people do know what serotonin is, but it's, in layman's terms, it's our happy, calm, coping chemical. Now, here's the thing. In my training as a clinical hypnotherapist, we had always worked on the basis of people who are struggling with anxiety and depression and feeling low and et cetera, have depleted serotonin. And our job in the way that we work with them was to help them to think differently in ways that would support them in changing the way their body, and in our training, it was all about the brain. It's all about the brain. To enable, which is where the second core pillar comes from, neural pathways, to produce more of that serotonin. So that was how this is why I hadn't put two and two together. So then I discover, because of this journey I've been on and this decision I've made, to go, hang on a minute, I think I can help these women. I think I have been helping these women, but now I'm going to put it out there, like, this is what I do. I discovered that estrogen plays a key role in producing serotonin in our bodies. And I thought, hang on a minute. So here we have a time in life, estrogen falls off, serotonin is what we need to remain happy, calm, and coping. Oh, and suddenly we don't have it. Well, that's going to have an impact on well-being mentally. So that drop-off does cause, if you stop producing serotonin in any degree, it does cause anxiety, mood swings, those feelings of helplessness. And that's why many GPs, the only thing they're going to offer you, as I've said, is either HRT, standard estrogen replacement type HRT, or they're going to offer you antidepressants, which are usually what's known as SSRIs, which is serotonin, I don't know what the two S's are, I've forgotten, but serotonin reuptake inhibitors. In other words, it enables your brain and your body to hold on to what little serotonin you're producing. That's why they do it. But you may have experienced this, my clients experience this, doesn't necessarily seem to work. So here's this picture again. The more I tried to solve my problems, the bigger those problems became. And this may be familiar for you, it was like I was going round and round and round and round and just banging my head repeatedly against a brick wall. But why? Why would that have anything to do with menopause? But the thing is, that depleted serotonin meant, and I didn't know I was suffering from it, okay? It meant that I couldn't easily access those reserves of calm that would allow me to think clearly, because it's gone. Like, it's just not there. And we need calm for clarity. So this may be familiar to you. The more frustrated I got, and the more that happened, the more I created those negative downward spirals of thinking that is beautifully illustrated in this graphic, just weighed me down. You can just feel, perhaps in my shoulders, you can't see me right now, like I've slumped. That's what it felt like. So you have a double kick. So you falling levels of serotonin and dopamine, which is your motivational hormone. You need that too. And the two are related. They're hand in glove, brother and sister, serotonin and dopamine. And when you have a drop off of those and an increase in that negative thinking, it feeds the production from your primitive brain of excess adrenaline and cortisol. And it's a phrase I learned in my training, which is cortisol makes you stupid. It dulls your thinking. So just as serotonin and dopamine are brother and sister, adrenaline and cortisol are the devil's opposite. I mean, we need them sometimes, but in terms of you feeling calm and capable, they're just to get you out of danger, but you're living with them day in, day out, and they come as a package. But I knew from my training and my experience on myself and with my clients that the right kind of thoughts, remember positive neural pathways, also influence serotonin and dopamine production. So if I don't have estrogen anymore, what else can I do that might help? So before I move into the second secret, if you like, and remember that line, I left a kind of bit of a cliffhanger, but that was what I've mentioned several times, the positive neural pathways. I want to share with you a story about Rose, one of my clients. And rather than me elaborate exactly what her story was, I'm going to let her tell it for herself. And I know you won't believe this, but I'm just going to share with you, this was a testimonial. And it was one that it was willingly given. I didn't go, okay, do you mind doing it? She just wanted to do this. So I think she explains it so beautifully. It's not worth me paraphrasing. I just want to let her speak for herself in her own words. So while you might be reading that, I'll just read it for those of you perhaps you might be looking on tiny screens, for example. She said, overwhelming, crippling anxiety and brain fog. Familiar? Led me to me, basically. I had tried everything else. So she talks about the things I've talked about: upping my antidepressants, meditation, exercise, yoga, gratitude journal, even HRT, which didn't work for me. And we're talking traditional HRT, but overwhelm and brain fog remained. So some of those things she had tried, I would recommend you try, irrespective. I'm not going, oh no, you don't want to do that meditation thing or that yoga thing or that exercise or gratitude thing. I would still recommend that you do them. This is not an either or. This is do as much as you possibly can to help yourself. Those do help. But she was saying that, well, the overwhelm and the brain fog remains. So then we got together, we started working together, and I don't need to read the glowing words. It's lovely to receive that. But basically, by working through those three core pillars, what's the impact? Let's look at developing neural pathways, one small step at a time, so that you can start the third core pillar, which is living again for you. And that's what she's doing. She's finally, as she says, mapping out the life she wants. I love the fact that she swears. I'm finally stepping into my power. So I think that is what is possible. So everything I said at the beginning that you might have thought, yeah, really, this is possible. So let's look at that second secret. I've talked about the neural pathways. Let's dive into them a bit more. And this, seriously, I was trained in it, but it was sheer desperation that got me to this place of recognizing it in myself. So we talk about neural pathways. There's positive neural pathways and there's negative neural pathways. When we're in anxiety, we're running the negative ones. We're diving into that downward spiral, that vortex of thoughts. And, here's the graphic, blah, 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 blah. Thoughts that aren't helping us, but we can't stop them. But here's something that this is purely opinion based on my experience and my observation. It's no research to back this up other than what I'm seeing and hearing. This is the kind of person I was. Yep, I can do that. I can do that. Look at me. Yep, that's fine. Give it to me. Sometimes it was a lack of boundaries. Like I was saying yes to things I probably shouldn't have, but I did see myself as someone who's really competent, really capable. That was the kind of person I was. I tend to find that my clients have a similar kind of approach to saying yes to everything. Yes, I can do this. Even when they're not thinking or feeling it, they're doing it. But they've always lived like this. And although they might have had moments of really, bumping, I don't want to do this, they were still coping. They were not collapsing. And then I discovered this thing that I've termed emotional navigation. So I've gone from this plate spinning, multitasking, coping. Remember, we've been through the drama, the story, collapse, everything. So I've gone to this place. I'm not coping anymore. I'm not spinning any plates. I'm dropping all of them. And then there's this thing I describe as emotional navigation. And I discovered it in it was a crochet class, actually. Well, it was knitting and crochet, but I was doing crochet. So what the hell is that, Shirley? Oh, let's go back to that. One of the things that occurs, I'm going to try to make this as simple as I can. One of the things that occurs when we find ourselves challenged on any level, we think, okay, here's the class, like this is the logical thing to go, okay, think calmly. But remember, we can't think calmly, can we? Because that's gone. That went with the serotonin. So the calm thinking is a little bit thin on the ground. But let's assume, stick with it, we still go, yeah, but think, what do I do? And we try to come up with logical solutions, like how can I make this better? How can I make this better? And what happens is it comes from the prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain, which is the logical, the bit that makes great decisions when it can function properly. But it can't make any great decisions. It keeps coming up against those dead ends, those brick walls. And the more it does that, the worse the problem gets. Because when you can't solve a problem, you get a bit frustrated, and then you try it again, and you get more frustrated, and you try it again. You keep trying, you get more and more frustrated. And you also go into that insanity loop of doing the same thing over and over and expecting at some point it will work in a way it never did before. And that's what many women get stuck in menopause anxiety. So here's the thought. I just thought, I don't know how to get out of this myself. But I do know one thing. Suddenly a little light bulb went off. I thought, hang on a minute. What did I do with clients when they were stuck like this in the past? Not menopausal clients, just anxious clients. What did I do when they had no idea what the like they were stuck? I thought, I used to ask them if there was something that maybe from their childhood, some long forgotten thing they enjoyed, or something that they just liked and they've consigned to childhood or the past, or they've judged it as, yeah, but I'm not very good at it. What was this? Was there something you just enjoyed ever? And I thought, okay, let me try this on myself. And in trying it on myself, so this was not an instant thing. I want you to know this was not, I was turning this thought over in my head for quite a while, going, what did I like? What did I like? What did I like? And kept coming up with ridiculous things like, I used to do like making mud pies in the garden when I was little. I lived in a flat. So I was thinking, how's that going to help then? So I dismissed that, although I kept it running, kept coming back to it. And then I remembered there was this thing I did at primary school where I did a beautiful piece of, which I now know is called cross stitch, but I didn't know it was called that then. And I remember I really liked it, but I never, ever, ever did anything like that again. And there were reasons around that, but it doesn't really matter what those are, but I didn't. So I was thinking, well, how's that going to help? I don't like sewing. I'm no good at it. Was my logical brain going, yeah, but you don't like it. You're not good at it. That's my logical brain. But I'm trying to tap into the part of my brain that is, intuitive and creative, doesn't need all that logic going on. And I just keep gently asking the question. And then I walked past my library and I saw a notice for a little friendly knitting class, beginner's welcome. And I thought, what have I got to lose? It's not like I'm doing anything else. So I went to this class, and these lovely women who were very competent were so patient with me. And I just learned to just do some basic stitches, and it didn't really matter what was happening. And the purpose behind this, and why I call it emotional navigation, was that it did a number of things. It made me feel relaxed, the key thing. There was no pressure to perform, key thing. I got into a flow just by creating a row of crochet. There was no thinking about what to do, how to do it, whether I was doing it right, no pressure from outside. I was in flow, key thing. And what that does, if you imagine, it kind of blasts holes, good holes, doorways, if you like, into other parts of your brain that you think you've lost. And suddenly fresh ideas start coming. So that is my best way of describing emotional navigation. And I hope it makes some sense. So I discovered it. And here's my story of a client who had a similar kind of process. So Sally was classic perfectionist, very logical. So remember, she's using that prefrontal cortex part of her brain, or I can work things out. It needs to be, let's line everything up. Let's get things in order. Let's do our checklist. Let's do a spreadsheet, that kind of logical. And she was really struggling with anxiety, but more so with anger and irritability, really getting annoyed and cross with people. And it was upsetting her because she thought, this isn't me. This isn't me, but I can't stop it. And she made progress. We were making progress, and it was slow progress, but she was making progress. But there was still this kind of niggly little gnarly bit of stuff that didn't seem to want to shift. Until I, again, like sometimes I'm slow, I thought, oh, hang on a minute. Let's ask her this question. In fact, no, I didn't even ask her the questions. We got into conversation, and she just happened to mention that she had a degree in textiles. And I thought, interesting. That's quite a creative degree. So I explored and I followed that. I said, oh, do you do any of that? And she said, oh, well, yeah, I've got a sewing machine, but it's all under the bed, and wherever, locked away in a cupboard, and I don't really do it much anymore. And I said, but you like it? Yeah, I like it. Okay. How about you get that out? So I persuaded her to start doing those things again, because I had a hunch, remember my emotional navigation, that doing that would potentially be the thing that would unknot that final gnarly bit. Surprise, surprise, it worked. She literally bowed. I mean, she was a different woman when I next saw her. She said, I'm back, that the real me has returned. So emotional navigation, really important. She tapped into a different part of her brain. And I know I'm hurtling through this masterclass, this won't all land, because you're stressed and anxious and probably overwhelmed and filled with brain fog, but some of it might. So here's what she said. I didn't have a nice long testimony like I did from Kathy, but nonetheless, I am delighted. All that matters is the results that she was able to get. That's all that matters. So here's the final piece of this jigsaw, the final secret that nobody's told us about. And, I talk with experts. I talk with experts in other areas of menopause, and they don't really see this. So this stuff is just based on my knowledge and learning from working with clients and my own experience. I describe it as stress synchronicity, which sounds awfully nice, really, doesn't it? Stress synchronicity. But we know it's not nice. Perimenopause, menopause can either trigger because of all of those negative thought processes or coincide with chronic stress overload. Now, some people argue with this, but hear me out. The truth is that when we reach that age where we start moving into perimenopause or through into the main event, menopause, it invariably coincides with a number of major events in our lives. And these major events that could be, parents dying, going into care, young people going to university, divorce, retirement, you name it. There's some examples here. They kind of come in little groups when we get to this time of our lives. And that contributes to chronic stress. And it's like a multiple pile-up. So if you think about this all led, so we've got a drop-off in serotonin, we've got more negative thinking, we're building stress anyway, and then there's these external factors. and everything comes together. And what we could have dealt with, if we just picked them off one at a time, become a problem because they all come together. And this is important to remember. For menopause anxiety, it's really critical. So just to dive briefly back into my story, because I didn't mention this aspect of it, here is my hindsight realization of where I was also experiencing chronic stress and I didn't realize. My mother was elderly and she was sick. She was in that, is she going into care? Is she not going into care? That's hard because I'm the only daughter. And my brothers, frankly, some brothers are great, but mine not so good. I remember I was doing really well with my coaching. A bank decided, oh, that's rather a large sum of money, and decided to withhold a rather large sum, $9,000 of client funds. That stressed me out knowing I'd be like, you think, oh, because that's what's going to pay the bill. You know how your brain goes. If you're calm, you can come up with a good reason. But remember, I'm not calm because I'm serotonin depleted and I'm having negative thoughts. And now it's getting worse because there's all these external factors. I've got a difficult client. Yeah, well, it happens. But on top of everything else, and now there's another of those lumps in my breast. So you can see here's a little pile up of chronic stress events. So here's my final story about Kathy. I credit Kathy really with everything that I do now, because she was the person really that made the penny drop for me. It wasn't my experience that made the penny drop. It wasn't even entirely the event where I talked about midlife reinvention. It was a combination. But the penny finally dropped with Kathy, who told me her story. She was incredibly anxious. She was on HRT and antidepressants and felt awful. I just want to go back. I want to complete Kathy's story. She felt awful. She was had a senior role in accounting practice, and that end of January, which in the UK is a big time for accountants, was coming up, where people are supposed to be filing their tax returns and all do it at the last minute. So she knew a stressful time was coming up. She felt like she struggled with seasonal affective disorder, like the light, and everything was just compounding how bad she was feeling. And she was at that point, do you remember Dr. Ann Carson, of thinking, I may have to give this up. And that stressed her even more because she had a financial retirement plan that depended on her staying in this job until a certain age. And so everything was coming together, chronic stress overload. But together we worked through those three core pillars: personal impact, neural pathways, and living. And little by little, step by step, we got her back to a place where she felt she could cope again. And went back to her job, and she sailed through, this is 2 years on. She's absolutely, well, it's stressful, but whatever. She's back to who she used to be. So putting it down to menopause and trying to wait it out, I want you to understand this, it just makes it worse, because once you get caught in a low-level state of anxiety where you feel the worst, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it exacerbates. So it won't get better, it will get worse and contribute to all those things that people tell me they hate: brain fog, overwhelm, anxiety, anger, irritability, loss of focus, you name it. And that was why Kathy felt the way she did. I knew I'd come back to this story in a minute. I need to reorder these. So what Kathy learned to do was write those positive neural pathways to replace the negative ones. And what she ended up doing, as I glossed over moments ago, she renegotiated work on her terms. Again, pre-COVID, so things that have become possible now were not quite so possible then. She became newly assertive, she was still her lovely self, but feeling more empowered to do more of what she wanted, to say no to things she didn't want to be doing, and to spend less time with people she didn't actually care for anyway. And when she did that, when Rose did that, when Sally did that, when I did that, what we were doing was strengthening positive neural pathways for the long haul, not just the short haul, the long haul. So here we have again. Let's recap. We have the serotonin depletion, which comes because of the drop in estrogen. We have neural pathways that no longer serve us. In other words, if we've been spinning plates and being really good at coping and not saying no enough, we are moving into a place that will increase our stress and make things worse. And third thing, stress synchronicity. External life events that are stressful accumulate and multiply about the same time as we go through menopause. So thank you for sticking with me. I'm hoping you found this incredibly helpful. If you've just taken one thing away from this, fantastic, I'm delighted, because you just need just one thing at a time. No one needs overwhelm. If you want to connect with me, please do. I'd love you to. As I said, I'm on Instagram, YouTube, there are videos there. The Facebook group, which is a private group, so you can share anything you like, is Menopause. Even though the name there is Menopause Freedom, the group is called Menopause Anxiety Freedom. And once again, if you would like to dive a little bit deeper into what I've shared today, to see how this works for you in your unique experience, then please take me up on this free anxiety escape call. It's only available for 7 days, so you need to jump in quick to get the 12 places that are available. I'd love to explore with you, map out a plan of what you might be able to do for your personal circumstances. So please take a snapshot of this slide. That link is not available anywhere else, and that will take you to a free call and not a paid call. Okay. Other than that, if you join the Menopause Freedom group, Menopause Anxiety Freedom group on Facebook, there's the address again, you will also be able to access not only this free 21 Calm in 5 meditation series, but also a hypnosis sleep audio and lots of free training too. So if you do nothing else, make sure you go to that group and join. Are we excited? Are we excited? I hope so. So just finally, even though I'm sharing this with you and I can't currently hear you, I want you to think about what's your biggest takeaway from today. What are you going to do differently as a result of what you've learned today? Maybe it's book an appointment with a DP. Maybe it's grab one of those calls with me. Maybe it's just to take up a hobby and see what happens. What is the one action you will take as a result of this session? And finally, very nearly finally, I'm sure there'll be another slide. I always do that. I go finally, and then there's something else to catch me up. But if you have enjoyed this masterclass or got any benefit at all, please provide a Google review. It's really helpful to me and to other women who need help to find me more easily if you provide a review, because that's how Google works. And that, again, if you could take a copy of this page, that's the review link. I'd be very grateful, and so would any women who are frantically searching on Google for some help with menopause anxiety. So you are helping others, not just me. Once again, if you didn't catch this earlier, take a copy of this screen. There's all the links where you can connect with me, including the link to set up that free 30-minute anxiety escape call where we map out your personal story. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I've enjoyed being with you. I'm really grateful for you being here, and I look forward. Just wondering if I might get nice. Oh, that's my lovely man that was up there. I can stop sharing now. So I'm grateful that you were here, and I really hope, I've got a bit off the shoulder there. Share this with anyone else who you think might like to come to this webinar masterclass, or maybe ones in the future. make sure you're connected and have a brilliant rest of the day. Reach out to me, grab one of those places. And if you don't want that place, share it with someone who you think might really value it. Rose, you'll notice, remember the story of Rose? It was her friend Carol who led her to me. So be a great friend to another person who may be struggling if it's not something you need right now. All right, love you lots. Bye for now.